Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Faith, Fitness, and Fastball. I am your host, Vincent Jackson. I am with my boy, Andy Young. Andy, how are you doing today, man?
No, I'm doing great, Vince. Thanks for having me.
Good, man. Good. How's the weather over there in AZ right now?
It's still hot, record highs actually. It's getting up to 100 again today, and it's what October 17th. It's getting a little late in the year for 100, but
Right,
hopefully it's
right.
cooling down soon.
For sure. For your sake, I hope it is. It's starting to cool down here in Atlanta, so I feel you on that. Little background. So me and Andy met each other through minor league ball. We were both drafted in the same year in 2016. I'm more of a Southeast guy, and Andy was raised in Fargo, and we'll get into that. So it's crazy how we became really good friends from being basically on the other side of the U.S. Which is cool, and which I feel like the game of baseball helps us get to that point
Definitely, yeah.
for
Fargo,
sure.
North Dakota, Vince, for everyone that doesn't know where Fargo is.
Yeah, North Dakota. Yeah, I mean, I've never heard of I had never heard of Fargo before I met you. So, and some of the stuff
Yeah.
y'all do out there is absolutely absurd, and
Mhm.
the weather is also absurd. I mean, what's like the lowest it's ever gotten there, like temperature wise?
So the coldest I've ever seen in North Dakota was in a small town called Crosby, which is on the Montana and Canada border, and it was negative 57 degrees with a negative 75-degree wind chill. And that's the coldest that I've ever saw. And I remember we were hunting, and if you had skin exposed, it would blister over, so you couldn't have any skin exposed. So that was kind of the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, that looks like something that seems like something from a movie. So I would never
Yep.
imagine. So don't ask me to ever go in a weather like that because I'm gonna decline that.
Yeah.
Um, but cool, man. So let's get started. So tell us a little bit about your career. Obviously, you made it to the big leagues and have a couple years with the Arizona Diamondbacks. So tell us, about your high school career and and go from there. And I think the people would love to know that part first.
Yeah. So being from West Fargo, North Dakota, it's obviously a very, very cold climate. I think our high school season, we can only play 17 days a year. We play like 30 games, all double headers, because when school
Mm,
ends, it's so cold on the field that by the time spring rolls around, school's almost done. So you really got to rush the high school season in. So it's a very, very short season. Obviously, cold weather. Um, and I just remember um, shoveling the field and doing that stuff for prep. It was fun. You had some really good friends that you played up with
right.
your whole life, like 9 to 18, which now I think is kind of getting lost in baseball with all the club stuff. But up there in
Hmm.
small town, you do play with those same guys, so you do build a good friendship. But it is hard to be recruited out of Fargo because the season is so short that the stats are manipulated. The pitchers
Hmm.
don't throw very hard, so you will have a guy in a 30 game, 28 game season. Someone will hit 500, and
Yeah.
it's hard for a college to be like, man, how do I recruit a 500 average on a pretty short sample size? And
Mhm.
the pitchers are throwing like 82. So
Yeah.
not to discount everyone, because there are some very good players. Matt Strom, who just closed out the NLDA,
Hmm.
NLDS. He's from my high school, and I played with him, and he's obviously one of the best pitchers in the world,
Right.
closing that game out. But there are a lot of kids that wouldn't blow up a radar gun and stuff like that. So I
Right.
remember in high school, at the end of my senior year, I won Gatorade Player of the Year in North Dakota, which was an
Mm.
awesome honor. But
I
I
did
did
not
not
know that.
have, yeah, yeah. So I was Gatorade Player of the Year in North Dakota, but I didn't have a single Division I offer. So it's
Mm.
like, so it is kind of like, man, like I feel like I'm a good player.
Right.
Numbers say that maybe I'm a good player, but there's not a single Division I school in the country that's going to give me any money. So I think that at times kids up there think that maybe they can't compete with Southern kids when they
Hmm.
go online and see someone from like Atlanta throwing 95. You know what I mean? They're
Hmm.
like, man, I've never seen 90 in my life. I've never seen
Right.
92 in my life, and that seems like a pretty common thing. So I think some kids just don't they don't know where they stack up. So
Right.
I don't know if you know this either, Vince, but after high school, I went to NAIA in North Dakota for a year in a
Mm,
smaller town called Jamestown. And just because I had no offers.
right.
I had a few junior college offers, but they were all pretty far south, and I didn't know if that's something I was going to do. There's probably
Right.
some doubt in there if I was good enough to play with the kids in Arizona and Kansas. Those are the two junior colleges I was talking to.
Okay. I did not
And
know
then,
that also about the NAIA school, so I did not know that.
yeah, so I went there for my freshman year, and I hit three and started short. And going back to Matt Strom, the relief pitcher for the Phillies, he was at Neosho Junior College at the
Mm-hmm.
time, and he called me up late into the summer. Yeah, it must have been the summer after my freshman year, and he
Okay.
goes, "Hey, our shortstop just got taken pretty late by Arkansas. We need a middle infielder. I think you should come down here." Like, I played with him in high school. He said, "I think that you can compete with these guys, and I think that it'd be a good stepping stone for you." And I was like, "Oh man,
Definitely.
I don't know. Still, I don't know." And then finally, I took a visit down there, Chanute, Kansas, Neosho Community College, very, very small town in southern Kansas. And I was like, you know what, I'll go for it. Screw it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I feel like
Sure.
I have a lot of screw it in me. So I was like, whatever, I'll try it.
Right.
And then it was obviously a really good decision for me because it's very hard to get seen in North
Mm-hmm.
Dakota, and then especially at an NAIA in North Dakota. So
Yeah.
but I did really enjoy that NAIA, and I have nothing bad to say about them. It was
For sure.
awesome guys, great stuff. It's not a place where people go professionally. I don't know if they've had more than 2 draft picks in their whole history. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't really know. It's not a spot where people come out and look for baseball players.
Yeah.
So I
But you
went
were
to
appreciative. You were very appreciative of them giving you an opportunity, though, which is kind of what started you for everything.
Exactly, yes. And I really enjoyed the coaches. I really enjoy all the people I met, and I still keep up with some of them now. And yeah, it was just a different opportunity that just kind of fell in front of me with just a kid getting seen at Arkansas really late, and they took him from the junior college, and then a spot
Right.
opened up and just randomly in my position. So it was just
Yeah.
a luck thing. So yeah, then I went to Neosho County.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was very successful there. I think I hit almost 370
Okay.
around that. And it's like, that's kind of when I don't know if any pro scouts started to take notice, but definitely some division ones.
For
I got a
sure.
call from schools that I never thought I'd be talking to. And these aren't crazy SEC schools. It's just,
Right.
I never thought I would even be talking to mid-major division ones.
Right.
And so like I took a visit to um, like schools like Butler, and I
Mm-hmm.
talked to Nebraska, but they didn't even bring me on a visit and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. And these, for a lot of people, are probably not overly impressive schools. Like Vince, you went to Tennessee, and
Yeah.
kids in Atlanta, they go SEC, ACC,
Yeah.
PAC, they go wherever they want if they don't get drafted. So
Yeah.
it was a little bit different for me because I've never really even talked to a Division I school.
Exactly.
And then I ended up going to Indiana State, and I remember
Mm-hmm.
that year they were at a regional, and I remember watching Indiana State play someone. Shaman I was pitching. I remember that he went to Indiana State,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Big leaguer
he
for
was like,
several years.
yeah, and he was throwing on ESPN in a regional, and it's like, I cannot believe that I'm going to a college that's on TV. You know, like
Yeah.
that is the craziest thing um, to that point I've ever seen. It's like, man, I can't even imagine that happening.
Right.
So yeah, then I went to Indiana State.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I went there as a junior and a senior.
Yep.
I played pretty well. Same kind of thing. I went in thinking let's see how I stack up. I'm going to try
Yeah.
to win a spot. And I ended up starting at third base as a junior and as a senior. I think I was second team all conference or something.
Nice. Yeah.
Nothing crazy, but good years, great coaches, love the program. And
Yep.
this year they actually went to a super regional, so that's really cool to see them still taking off.
They beat Tennessee. I think I forgot what year it was, but they were playing against Tennessee, and we were texting each other. And I think they put a good whooping on us a couple years ago that had me a little upset.
Yeah, they seem to get those big schools once out of 3 games. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Or at least when I was there, we'd grab Vandy and we'd get them once, and then
yeah.
the other 2 games were a little harder with our depth. But now I think they're better than we ever were. So maybe they're a little different. But yeah, I remember actually this funny story, Vince. I went back and I looked at when we beat Vanderbilt. Their Friday night guy was Carson Fulmer. He beat us. And this was with Dansby at short and all these guys.
Walker
And
Bueller and all that, and all those guys on that team.
yeah, but you know who was our Saturday night guy, Vince?
Who?
John Kilchowski, and that's who we beat.
Mm.
So how funny is that? And he was a teammate with us
Yep.
with St. Louis. So I looked that up because I knew it was a lefty, and it's like, oh my God, it was John. And then I went back and looked at the stats, and he actually punched out like 12 people, which is kind of funny. But
Of course.
we did get him, so that was kind of cool to see that connection when we were in pro ball all playing together.
I would have loved to have been in the locker room telling that story. He would have blew a gasket. So, and I'm
Yeah.
hopefully I could get him on here because he has some crazy stories. And I would definitely make sure to bring that back up. But good, man. So and this is another reason why I wanted you on here, because although we're really good friends, you have already told me stuff that I don't know yet, that I didn't know, but I knew your story was unlike other people's. When it came to starting from Fargo and playing double headers and crazy weather, and then going to NAIA, and it's like you had another obstacle each year. And so now I want you to briefly walk us through the day of the draft. So you had a good year, your senior year, and you were able to get picked by the Cardinals. But I want you to kind of go into detail about what round you were taken and what that day looked like, what your mindset looked like.
Yeah, so my junior year might have been a little bit better than my senior year in college. So I got some not good enough to get drafted, but good enough to get the interest of professional scouts. So I
Yeah.
remember I was probably I maybe filled out 10 to 15 professional questionnaires.
Okay.
Just go like based on what I did my junior year when I was starting my senior year.
Right.
So I think that these professional scouts were like, if he can continue to grow, he'll probably be a draftable pick.
Right.
But my senior year was almost identical to my junior year. It was around 300 with 8 home runs, pretty good defense, but nothing really, I think, stood out. Like there was nothing overly flashy. I've never thrown 95 across the infield.
Right.
I've never had like crazy speed tool. I'm not a huge guy. Like nothing I think really stood out to make a pro scout be like, man, like this is a for sure draft pick. I think it was always kind of a flyer. So I remember when I got done with my senior year, we lost out of the conference tournament. And keep in mind, I filled out these questionnaires months before the season.
Right.
And I didn't talk to any professional scouts. Like most guys, when I hear them, they're like, oh, we had a meeting. Like they'll go and have coffee. They'll talk about stuff. And if you're very, very like highly sought after, they'll actually go to your parents' house. They'll talk to your parents. They'll do all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even getting phone calls. So I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't know anyone's name. I just filled out questionnaires 5 months ago. And so when I left Indiana State, when I left Terre Haute, I thought my career was absolutely over.
Yeah.
And I got back to Fargo. I remember I was so now this is draft day. I put all my baseball stuff away. I was like, well, I'm going to go enjoy this last warm weekend before it gets cold. I'm going to the lake. Went to the lake with some friends. It was the draft was going on. It was the 3rd day. Still have heard nothing. I did not even think it was possible, Vince, to get drafted without talking to a scout. I did not think it was possible. Like, people knew that maybe because what I did my junior year, I could have got drafted. So with some of my friends, I was like, you know what? I think maybe it'll happen the 3rd day. But in the back of my head, I thought I was lying. You know what I mean? Like I thought that there's no possible way I can get drafted. I'm not even watching the draft. We were out on a boat, just having a normal Saturday, Sunday. I can't remember what day it was. And all of a sudden I get a call from my dad first. which is how you're not a highly drafted guy if your dad's calling you before the team. But he called me and he goes, "Hey, St. Louis just drafted you. I think you should get back to Fargo and get ready. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen."
Yeah.
I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then all of a sudden I get a call from St. Louis, and it was Gary LaRocque. And he
Mm-hmm.
goes, "Hey, Andy Young, we saw you at Indiana State, and we'd love for you to, or we signed you if you are accepting these terms, $3,000 senior sign,
Well,
last pick of
say that number again. Say what was the number you signed for?
$3,000."
Mm-hmm. I don't think a lot of people
And
know. I don't think a lot of people know that about the draft, where not everybody gets, the $1 million. So continue. We'll go back on that, but keep going with the story. Sorry about that.
yeah, so it was the last. It ended up being the last pick of the 37th round, and that round's not even here anymore. The draft
Yeah.
is now only 20 rounds, so I was the
Mm-hmm.
last pick of the 37th round. Signed for $3,000, and Gary LaRocque, the farm director, is like, "You're going to start in rookie ball and in the GCL, and we're going to need you in West Palm Beach, Florida, in 3 days." It's like, okay, yep, I'll be there.
Yep.
And at this time, I had no idea what rookie ball meant. I had no idea what any of that stuff meant, but I knew that I had to get back to Fargo and find my glove and my bat, because I thought I got rid of all that stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I remember I went back, and immediately after getting back, I went to the cage with my dad. I think he was just throwing to me. I think I had one of the worst rounds I've ever had in my life. Haven't touched it back in 2 weeks. And it's like, well, I don't know what rookie ball is, but they're probably going to be throwing harder than my dad in a cage. So this
Yeah.
isn't a great start. Uh, yeah. And so I don't know if, like, Vince, you never went to rookie ball. So rookie
No.
ball is basically I would say it's for very, very good Latin American players that are getting pulled out of the academy, that
Mm-hmm.
they're finally ready to play in America. High school draft picks from America, that's their
Mm-hmm.
first step. And honestly, probably older college guys that they want to be fillers on teams.
Yeah.
So for me, I was a filler behind like a Delvin Perez, who was playing shortstop,
Right.
um, stuff like that. And then I think they also use it for guys like me, as like, if someone in State College or Johnson City gets hurt, they trust an older college guy to go up there and do an
For
okay
sure.
job. Like, and that's hindsight looking back on it. I think that's pretty much. I don't know if you would agree with that's what
I
you think
definitely
it is.
agree. I definitely agree.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I mean, I think they used rookie ball, because rookie ball is like when it kind of comes to the states. There's, let's just say, there's AAA, there's AA, there's high A, there's low A. There was short season. I think that's done short season for like a lot of college guys. And
Yep.
then there's rookie ball. Now the Cardinals had two short season teams. They were Johnson City and they were Penn State. You went to the GCL, which I didn't start there, but I unfortunately had to go back for like 3 weeks. And you get that. I mean, that schedule is, you're there at crack of dawn. You practice. Your games are at what, 12 or 1-ish? Would you say?
Yep. I think every game was at 1 in Florida in the summer, so it's warm on
Yeah.
backfield too, not stadiums. There's
No
no.
fans. No fans. Your teammates are your fans.
Yep, that is 100% correct.
Which is crazy to think about. So, but yeah, I mean, your story is very interesting once again because of that. You touched every level. I mean, you where we met was kind of, going back to what you said. I don't know if somebody got hurt or not, or maybe you were just going off into GCL. But whenever a lot of us who were drafted, like half of us who got drafted that year in 2016 went to State College, and I think you maybe came, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe like a month or like 3 weeks into the season. Like, is that what it was, you think?
Yep, I think I was in the GCL for 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So yeah, that's exactly where I started. And then obviously you came up with Penn State, and we actually won a championship that year, which was really cool. Because that, I will say, I don't know if we were just lucky, or if it's kind of just the luck of the draw, but we had some interesting characters on that team. But all probably like 8 or 9 of us were extremely close. Wouldn't you
yep.
say?
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
think that was such a fun year of baseball because um, we weren't conditioned in the professional game yet because we
right.
just got done with our college seasons, and college baseball is so much camaraderie.
Yeah,
You're playing with your friends, you get very close. A lot of people are there for multiple years. So I think that that's kind of how we've always been raised to play baseball. So that year we got close like a college team, and we were also very, very good, which
yeah,
helps. You know what I mean? We all played well. Our team won a ton of games. We won a win. We actually won the what is it? The New York Penn League. We got a
yep.
ring and we won all that stuff. So it was awesome. And yeah, we got very close because of that. And then unfortunately, professional baseball happens and it gets a little more individualized. But that year, we don't even know yet. You know what I mean? So we don't even know if like,
Absolutely. Yeah. We went
you know,
into it, we're like, oh wow, this I mean, obviously you hit how you hit, but I mean, if the camaraderie rise is gonna be this, I mean, this is gonna be fine.
yep.
And like you said, that next year we were all in for a rude awakening. But maybe for the camaraderie rise, but going like kind of jumping up to the next thing, that next year after we won the championship, we all came back. And we all got a lot of us got scheduled to go to Low A, which was in Peoria, Illinois. And
Hmm.
you were there, several other of us were there. And and I'm gonna tell you kind of my story from where I saw with you. Um, you were there, and it was, for one, it was freezing, like wherever we went those first couple of weeks. So that was that. But I don't know if it was like a month or like some couple of weeks into. I want to say, let's just say it was a month. Okay, we were in shorts at this time. Donnie Ecker, who hopefully I can have on here one day, is I would say he's the first and the last, but he's the first hitting coach that I ever had in my life. And when I say that not because, no offense to like my college people, like college coaches or anybody, but he knew hitting not just for in baseball, but he knew like what your body needed to do to get to the ball more efficiently. And
Yep.
I don't know if the Cardinals just didn't like that or whatnot, but unfortunately he wasn't with that Cardinals. The Cardinals that next year, I don't think, but he was well above his time. I mean, I think he was one of the first people we're started talking about, the biometrics of the body and hitting mechanics. He was talking stuff that I had never heard, but it was working. I mean, I had never hit a backside home run and an oppo home run, and I had hit like 5 that year, and I credit that obviously to my work, but also to him. I mean, he taught
Yep.
a lot of that. So jumping to your story, and this is once again my perspective. I promise you, it was like just a random Tuesday game or something like that, and Donnie, and you were hitting fine. I mean, you weren't like it was, in my opinion, you weren't. It wasn't nothing that was sticking out, but you were hitting good. And
Yep.
Donnie was like, I just remember him like working with you on something, and I think you like added like a pretty decent leg, like a leg lift in there. And
Hmm.
I mean, it was night and day. I mean, you started hitting some balls that were just like crazy, and and I don't know what your numbers were that year, but you went off and you were all-star that year, and then you end up going to you got picked. I mean, you got sent to high A pretty quick. I mean, walk us through that interaction with Donnie Ecker, if that helped any way, and what happened that year that kind of catapulted you to eventually make it to the big leagues.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right on Donnie Ecker's the best hitting coach I've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
How he describes it, how he can see things, look at analytics, but also talk about holding different pieces of the body. For me, it was just holding my hip, which brought my leg up, changed my angles. I think what he saw in me was I hit the ball probably a little bit above average exit velo wise, but my
Mm-hmm.
angles were very, very poor. I would hit the ball directly into the ground,
Mm.
and and um, as you go up in this game, ground balls eventually get through the infield less.
Yeah.
Not to say, not to say ground balls can't be hits. Not to say I'm not a crazy hit the ball at 30-degree guy,
Right.
but it is crazy to not admit that versus high school to the big leagues, every level you go up, the infielders get bigger, they get faster, they start playing deeper, and those ground balls do not get through.
Yep.
So I think that he saw that, and he pretty much said, you can change these angles, or this will probably be the last step for you in this game. And it's like, well, I guess I'll change some angles. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Right.
I was a pretty stubborn hitter, but I was not hitting that well. And when someone comes up to you that, especially at that time, you're like, this guy has to have a huge impact on my career, which he did in a positive way.
Right.
He was like, if you don't change these angles, this is not going to continue to play as you move up the ladder. And I
Yeah.
added leg kick, and I think my exit velos were similar, but just changing that angle a little higher.
Right.
Made my OPS and home run numbers a lot higher. And then I just saw the ball so much better. So my
Yeah.
strikeout went down as well. So it was a crazy thing that he did for me and a lot of other people on that team. I mean, if you look at, you had a great year. Tommy Edman is still just, I mean, he always hit, but I would like to say that he definitely helped Tommy too for the short time he was there. Just our team, I think, led the Midwest League in hitting. And then if you follow just more on Donnie and less on us, I think after he had his breakup with the Cardinals, he went to the Angels and went straight to AAA. And they led the league in OPS. And then the next year he was the assistant big league hitting coach for the Reds. And that's the year that Senzel and a lot of those guys had great years. And then he went to the Giants, and that's the first time he was a big league hitting coach. And that was that year that the Giants, they were way down off their dynasty. They've been bottom of the Dodgers for a while now, and all of a sudden they're a playoff team again. It's like Brandon Crawford hitting like he's never hit before. So I think if you just follow his record around, it'd be crazy not to. And now he's the bench coach with the Rangers, and they're in the ALCS. So I think if you just follow his track around the league and look at what those teams does, I mean, or what they're doing, what they did and what they're already doing, it'd be crazy not to say he's one of the best baseball teachers that I've ever been around, if probably not the best on the offensive side, for sure.
For sure. No, I completely agree with that. I mean, he's definitely left a footprint on each place. And, you know, especially you were the first, and I think a lot of us, you know, like, not to say that we didn't trust what he was saying, but you were like the guinea pig for him, in my opinion. And once we saw, you know, you just going crazy, we're like, oh, maybe we need to buy into this. And a lot of us bought in, and I had never hit home runs that far in my life. I mean, Ryan McCarville was hitting, I mean, he always had good pop, but he was hitting crazy home runs. Brian O'Keefe, who had some big league time. Obviously, Tommy Edman, who, you know, has several years in the big leagues, the starter for the Cardinals. There was a track record there for even our team alone. So, you know, you were the one that kind of showed us, like, okay, you know, maybe maybe he does know what he's talking about, and we started to trust what he was saying, and it worked. And then for you, so, you know, going into your career, you know, the next year you still were going off, doing your thing, and you went to the Arizona Fall League, and it looks like you put up some good numbers there. And then just to, you know, walk everybody through it, you were a part of a trade that turned you from a 37th rounder to, you know, in the trade of Paul Goldschmidt. You know, walk us through, you know, hit on that a little bit about what that was like with you being with the Cardinals and then eventually getting traded, you know, and I think it was you and maybe two other guys that was in that trade for Paul Goldschmidt, who obviously is one of the top 3 first basemen in the league for the past however many years. Walk us through what that was like.
Yeah, so that was kind of crazy. It was after the Fall League off season. I got a call from Gersh, who I don't think he was the GM of the Cardinals yet, maybe assistant, but now he might be the GM. Either way, he was someone that if you're a minor league player, you do not normally talk to GMs.
Right.
So I was getting a call from Gersh, and I was like, oh man, this is not normal. This is kind of what I was thinking. I was actually, I don't know, you probably heard this story, but I was actually hunting, and I was sitting in a tree stand, and the wind was blowing. I had to walk back to take this call, and he's like, thank you for everything you've done for the organization. You've been in a trade. It's not public yet, but in the next 30 minutes, it'll go public, and just, you're going to Arizona. That's basically all he told me. Okay. And then I remember I just saw online that, and it was like pretty big accounts like MLB, Sirius XM radio, MLB, and stuff like that. Yeah. And it was like, Paul Goldschmidt's traded from Arizona to St. Louis for Carson Kelly, Luke Weaver, myself, and then I think like a next second round or composite
Yeah.
round pick or something. So I was like, that was just crazy. And I think that at that point, I went from being less of a 37th round pick and maybe more of a prospect at that point. Because when I
Facts.
came to Arizona, I didn't feel like I was fighting for every week.
Right.
And there were it was just a little bit different. I got invited to camps. I think that just how they treated me felt different. So like
Mm-hmm.
when I got drafted by the Cardinals, I wasn't really going to instructs,
Right.
or especially early in my career. I wasn't going to some of those strength camps or anything like that. At the end of it, when I played well, I went to an instructs and stuff like
Right.
that. But then with the Diamondbacks, I was going straight to instructs, and that year I was going to big league spring training. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like it was different, and that was cool to kind of see the other side of what a big league spring training looks like. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's kind of when that stuff started happening. But yeah, that trade was crazy, and it definitely changed my career because just going to, and especially Arizona was rebuilding a little bit at the time. It was just an awesome thing for my career for sure.
Definitely, I agree. And and although I was sad to see you go, I was obviously extremely happy for you because that's huge for anybody who knows baseball, especially in professional baseball. When you get traded for something like that, that kind of changes that changes your trajectory in your career.
Mm-hmm.
So once you got traded, you got to Arizona. You start off in the minor leagues. You still going off doing your thing. Then you get the call. Walk us through that day of when you got the call that, hey, your lifelong dream of making it to the big leagues is finally here. What was that day like?
Yeah, so it was my first year with Arizona, I went double A for a half, played pretty well, triple A for a half, and I played really, really well in triple A. And
Mm-hmm.
then the next year I was going to big league camp, and my first year in big league camp, it's just like, this is cool to see. I'm not on the roster.
Right.
I just want to make a good impression. And then this next year, that offseason, I got put on the roster. I was going back to big league camp, and it's like, I think that this is a year where I could turn some heads. Like, I feel
Right.
like it's possible this year. I had a very good big league camp. I think
Mm-hmm.
I was hitting like 350 or something before I got sent down. And then once I got sent down, COVID happened and they sent
Mm-hmm.
everyone home. So that was actually a crazy thing, career wise, but they sent everyone home. I was fortunate enough to be able to stay in Arizona. So I
Yeah.
just stayed and I hit and I continued to train, obviously not the facility or anything, but just a few facilities here were still open. So I was working out, I was doing all that stuff and hoping we're going to get this stuff going. It obviously dragged out longer than anyone
Mm-hmm.
thought. But then when we started up again, there was an alternate site and obviously a big league team. And so the alternate site was basically in the place of a AAA. Like
Yep.
they're the stay hot guys. They're going to play each other. They're going to see at bats. They're going to do all this stuff. And then if someone on the big league team gets hurt or they're just making a move, they just make a lot of moves like that, then you
Yeah.
guys will be ready. So I was actually done with an alternate set game, and that was all in Scottsdale at our spring training. So
Right.
it was kind of a unique thing too, where we would go and we would play at our spring training stadium only against ourselves. We couldn't really
Mm-hmm.
play other teams, and it'd be like 6-on-6 baseball because there was only like 30 people there, and
Yeah.
we had like strength coaches in the outfield. We had just like AAA managers calling balls and strikes, and they
Yeah.
were like 4 inning games, and it was so unique is how I describe it. And that's just
Yeah.
what we did every single day. And then one day I was done with one of those games and I was driving home and I got a call from our field coordinator and he goes, "Hey, tomorrow you're not going to Salt River, which is our spring training in Scottsdale." He goes, you're going to Chase, you're going to Phoenix, and you're going to suit up and you're going to debut and all this stuff." And I mean, it was an unbelievable feeling. I don't think that I ever really took a chance to I don't think I really soaked it in and thought this is so great. I think my mind naturally just goes to this is the next thing,
Mm-hmm.
which I think at that point you're so conditioned. I think that Vince, when you went from low A to high A, it's a similar feeling of okay, I am moving in the right direction. This is
Mhm.
what I want. But you don't get like this very happy, euphoric feeling. Like for you, you probably thought, all right, logistically, what do I have to do? Physically, what do I have to do? What's going on that team? How can I help that team? And I think
Right.
that got to me a lot sooner than anything else. Called my dad, called my grandpa. My grandpa cried. That was super cool. So that's when I was like,
Yeah.
all right, this is really cool for those guys. But for me, it's always like, what's the next thing?
Right.
And that yeah, I think when I played in like the first or second day I was there against I think the Dodgers, I was like in left field or something. And that's when I kind of took a second and I looked around in this empty COVID stadium and I was
Mhm.
like, this is pretty crazy that this is just happening in general. So I think I
Yeah.
soaked in a little bit on the field. But yeah, that's kind of how I would describe that, having a little time to think about it.
For sure, for sure. No, and everybody, takes, certain events differently. And the fact that you went from not even know if you were going to play, competitive college baseball to getting drafted in the late 37th round to making it to the big leagues. I mean, that testimony, that story on its own is just, I mean, I feel like you have a better chance of getting struck by lightning than doing something like that. So for you, what would you, in just a couple questions, I know we got to wrap it up, but what would you say if Andy, as of today, what would you say to the Andy of your senior year of high school? Like, what advice would you give to that Andy?
I think that I would tell him that like what you're doing is good enough and your
Mm-hmm.
work and your preparation is absolutely gonna play at the next level.
Yeah.
And not to second guess if you're as good as a kid in Atlanta and as a kid in Phoenix, as a kid in the Dominican Republic or Japan. Like it does not matter. Like it doesn't matter what other people are doing,
Right.
and your work is enough, and what you're doing is enough, and just worry about yourself because that's the only shit that matters. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that is the only thing that matters. And when you start trying to look and compare to other things, you start taking things with more judgment, and it's like you
Mm-hmm.
don't need any of that judgment. And it can be as small as a round of BP in the cage of like judging every swing. It's like
Yep.
you don't need that. You don't need any of that stuff. You can just take what you're doing is absolutely good enough. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And if you are truly a worker and you're getting things done, you're doing things right, you're doing what it takes, you're sleeping, you're doing all this stuff, that's a completely different conversation. But if you're doing what it takes, you don't need to compare yourself to other people. You know what I
Right.
mean? And that's what I would try to tell that kid, which I don't know if a freshman in high school would even understand that. But like as I
Mm-hmm.
get older, um, that's what I'll tell my son for sure. It's like
Yeah.
you are doing the right stuff. You do not have to compare yourself. It will absolutely work out if you want it to work out.
No, that's great because I had another question, but you kind of hit it where there's so many guys out here in the U.S. Let's just stick to the U.S. who are more like you than like the 10 graded like perfect game, all American guy where they're a normal baseball player in a normal town who has a dream that just wants the opportunity. And for a lot of kids, whether they're freshmen, and I train a lot of them who they have confidence, but they don't think that a certain level is attainable. And a lot of times
Mhm.
I tell them about your story. I tell them about my brother's story, and I tell them about your story. I'm like, look, man, I mean, the most beautiful thing about college baseball is you don't have to be rated, 10 out of 10 on perfect game to go play college baseball. I mean, some of the best guys I ever played in college weren't rated that high. I mean, no, I can name a list of guys who that was the case for. I mean, you go and the great thing about college is you go to college, you can go to NAIA and you could go to the next step. You can go to Juco, go off, go to the next step, and it just kind of keeps going, year by year. I mean, we have some guys who are some of the best JUCO guys I ever met. Some of the best baseball players I ever met went to a junior college. Some of
Mhm.
the people who were necessarily like 5 o'clock hitters who look good in BP, but they necessarily weren't the best in the game. I mean, a lot of those guys they do end up going to the top schools because um the tools are there. And although tools are good, tools are only gonna get you so far. You have to be able to put the product on the field. And I think you did a really good job of maximizing the skills that you had and getting the right people to get you to where you needed to go. So I mean, I tell a lot of my kids that I train, I'm like, look, man, like, don't worry about this guy you see on social media or this guy you see on Twitter or TikTok or whatever. I mean, just worry about yourself and worry about how you can become a better player, this year. Next year, that and kind of what you said, like, don't worry about next year or the year after that. Worry about how you can become better this year. And I really think you did a good job of that, solely because each year was something different.
Yeah. And I only, if I would have failed, that would have been my last year. Like, if you're
so you were kind of
37th
back against
round
the
pick,
wall.
you are fighting for your life every half year, probably less than a year. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I had that mentality, not because it wasn't ingrained in me. Like, I didn't
right.
read a book, and it's like I was smart enough to look around and see people getting released. And it's like, that guy was drafted in the 30th round. And
Yeah,
this is his second year of pro ball, and he just got released, and he was here for 4 weeks. So
yeah,
it's like I maybe am not the smartest person, but I was smart enough to figure that one out. It's like, you
yeah,
better lock it in, or you got 4 weeks, kid. You know what I mean?
yeah. It's the polite, and I tell if somebody will ask, maybe they ask you or ask me or ask whoever, like, why did you stop playing? And I always give the answer. It's never one thing. But I will say that the grim. We call him the Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper in pro ball comes for everybody at one point. Is it did they come for you your second year, or did he come for you your 15th year? You don't know. But kind of like you said, you can see the writing on the wall a little bit. I mean.
Yeah.
I think it was Bills. I always tell the story. I mean, you had completely different backgrounds when it came to the game of baseball. I'm from the South. I went to University of Tennessee. I did XYZ. You were from Fargo. You did XYZ. And I always tell the story. I mean, when we were in high A, I mean, that's I struggled I struggled a lot there. That's those first couple of weeks. Bills told me this, and I'll never forget this. And I laugh about it now, but at the time it was a little still struck. I mean, Bills, who was our manager at the time, he goes, VJack, I'm gonna be straight with you, man. You're 23 years old, and you're in high A. And I was like, yeah, like, I am. Thanks for getting my age right. And he was like, well, I was 22 and I was in the big leagues, and that was the conversation. He was like,
Yeah.
have a good game today. That was how he ended the conversation.
Yeah.
So in my head, I'm
That
like,
was his way of kind of telling you, let's get it going, or we don't
yeah,
have that many years. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And those subtle hints, if you're a good self-evaluator, you can kind of figure it out. And you're exactly right you can see the writing on the wall sometimes.
absolutely, absolutely. You see the writing on the wall, because it's not necessarily because I try to tell people this. It's not that my talent was down. There's just people don't, and I tell people this. People, and I didn't. I don't think you did. I don't think none of us do until you get there. But people don't realize how much talent is out there, not just in your state or your city or your country, but in the world. I mean, a lot. We weren't competing against just me in each other. We were competing against guys from Venezuela, guys from Cuba, guys from California, guys from Mexico. I mean, we were competing against all these guys, and they didn't care. Oh, this guy was from here or there. They were like, for me, I was a corner outfielder. I mean, and another thing also, I mean, like, hey, Vince, like, not to be mean or anything, but in the big leagues, corner outfielders, you got to hit 25, and or at the least. And if not, they're gonna find somebody else that can. And if you're not hitting 25, that better be like a 315, 300, 280 average, something in there. Like, and if not, they'll find somebody else, some Dominican or Venezuelan, they can sign for 10K, who just hit 25 pumps in their league, who are 17 years old. So that also puts a lot in perspective that not everybody makes it to the big leagues. Like, obviously, it's the 1% of high school players get drafted. So I would say go ahead and do that again for guys who make it to the big leagues. I mean, probably 5% of guys who get drafted make it to the big leagues, if that. So you have to maximize your potential for whatever that is. And I really feel you maxed yours out. That potential. You made it to the big leagues, and you started several games. I mean, my best story one of my best stories in baseball wise is whenever I got to go see you play when I was living in DC. I didn't know if you knew, but I didn't know if you were starting or anything. I thought you were just gonna be on the bench, and I was hoping to get a getting that bat in. And then you got us tickets, and I sat right next to your family, and obviously I love your parents, and we just chatted it up, and you were starting that game. And I was like, holy snap! I was like, holy snap! And I walked over to left field for a split second. Patrick Corbin was pitching that day, and you hit a ball that was 30. You hit a ball 30 feet away from me. You hit a bomb, off a bomb that day. I was just like, how cool is this? Like one of my best friends that just have the opportunity to be here, wasn't even supposed to start, and hit a bomb that day. I mean, so just things like that. It is for someone like me, I get those moments and know that like these are the things I can pass on to all my clients and stuff that I do my training with, because you just never know. I mean,
Yeah.
did you know that you were going to make it to the big leagues after you were struggling, like trying to find college? Like, is that something you thought of?
Never, Vince. No, there were some bad days in junior college when I was like, man, I think this is my last year of baseball. And I probably had that thought every year after that.
Wow.
I think this is probably my last year of baseball. And I've had that thought since I left in NAIA school. At least one.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, bro. Like, that's just a crazy, like, that's very overwhelming and crazy. That's your story, because you like you said it. I mean, each year could have been. You never know. You never knew. It could have been one bad year, or like of whatever. I mean, you might not get a scholarship or get that call, or you just never know. So, but no, man. I mean, one thing about you, bro, is that you were one of the guys that showed like, hey, like if you put the work in and you just do, you stick to each game. You never thought necessarily about like, for what it seemed to us, you never thought about that next year or that next game. You just focused on today. And one of the cool things about you was whether you had 2 bombs in a game or you struck out 3 times, you were just the same Andy. And I'm not, Andy to me is a funny cat, but you were the same Andy, and which kind of kept a lot of us mellow. Like, well, it is just one game. We have 145, 150 games we got to play. Like, one bad game isn't going to make or break me. So, but cool, man. I mean, I appreciate you, being on this podcast with me, man, and just telling your story. It's one for the books, man. So I appreciate you, big dog, and I love you. And just thanks, man, for taking time out of your day to be here with me.
No, thanks for having me, Vince. It was super fun to talk about some of this stuff. It's been a minute, and it's fun to go back to the state college days too and remember how much fun that stuff was. So thanks for having me, Vince. It was really fun.
For sure, man. For sure. Anytime, man. And well, great, guys. Well, this will wrap up this episode of Faith, Fitness, and Fastballs. I appreciate you guys joining in. Make sure to look out on YouTube. Follow the page, follow the IG page. Appreciate you guys, and see you guys next time.